Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I want to show you how you can easily install a carbon fiber front lip onto your BMW M2. All right, guys, let's talk about this project a little bit before we do it. I'm really excited to get this on my car. Now, I'm not trying to clone the M2 CS. It has a lot of unique carbon fiber elements, but it is some really cool stylistic choices, and it can help you customize your car, make it stand out, and look a little bit different. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the little bit more of aggressive look that you see. And CT Carbon makes a fantastic set for the M2 Competition. Now, make sure to check all the other videos in the series. This is just one part in the entire series as we add the entire CS style kit to my M2C. So in this case, we're going to be installing the carbon fiber front lip. It looks absolutely fantastic, and installing it isn't very hard. Now, one of the very first things you're going to do is get your car in the air. Now, forgive me, I always say this in every one of my videos where your car's up in the air. You can do this with a jack and jack stands, but do not do this with just a jack, okay? Now, I've seen jacks fail. You're betting your life on a 50-cent part that could fail at any time, unexpectedly. I've seen them fail, and best case scenario, your car's gonna come down and could be potentially damaged. Worst case scenario, you are under your car, and that is a very, very bad day. Okay, so getting your car up in the air, if you're using a jack, please make sure to use jack stands. I'm a big fan of my quick jacks. Make sure to check out my video on that. And they're an investment that's paid off for me, I'll tell you. But however you do it and get the car up in the air, do it safely. Okay, so one of the very first things we're gonna do is I'm gonna crawl underneath, I'm gonna show you the work, and we're gonna clean all of that section where that front lip is going to go so we get good adherence when we put the part on. All right, let's dive under the car. Okay, so here we are looking underneath the car, and you can see underneath the front bumper here, you can see a little bit. I've got PPF on the car, but it's not gonna protect you from scrapes like concrete or the like. I've done really well in this car, not scraped it up too badly, but there are a couple of places where sadly I have caught it once, and you know, it kind of broke my heart. But the new lip is gonna cover all that, but anything that basically you see in black plastic down here or the body paint color of your car, all of this all the way around, this entire big long shape, you want to take a microfiber cloth and some isopropyl alcohol and wipe it down really, really well, because we want all of this through this stretch to be clean. Make sure that it is clean as you possibly can be. But what we do want is we want to make sure that when we're going to use some 3M double-sided adhesive as well, that we get an excellent adherence to this. So it is as strong as it possibly can be. Okay, so go ahead and use that. Go ahead and clean this off, and then I'll show you what's next. All right, so forgive me holding this up here with one hand right at the moment, but we just basically want to look at fitment. And you can see how the notch fits into the notch of the bumper. It comes all the way around the outside, fits here underneath. And there's a lip here on this front edge that kind of lips into the existing bumper, and you can kind of feel exactly right where it's gonna fit. Now, the other thing you're gonna have is you'll see holes in this, 1, 2, 3 on the outside, 1, 2 through the center, and 1, 2, 3 down that side. But the other thing we're going to do is we're going to install some 3M automotive adhesive on this to not only make this more secure and hold it into place, but it's actually going to help with the install as well. Because when we put the screws in here, we're going to have a series of choices that we need to make on how exactly you want to do it. And I'm going to give you those choices when we get there. But the first thing we want to do is actually install the 3M tape on all of this, so it'll hold into place not only securely long-term, but also during our install. So let me get this set aside, and we'll take a look at that. One last additional point here as I flip it over here briefly. If you notice, I've got great slip low across the bottom of all of this. I highly recommend it if you're doing a carbon fiber install like this. Make sure to check out my slip low install video. It's really simple, it's really easy, and I highly recommend it. Okay, so I've got this laid out here. So when you look at this, you can feel the track of where it's going to be up against the bumper, because there's a bit of a raised lip. So we want to be on the inside. So this is being on the outside of the bumper, the lead edge, this being the back edge. So I've got 1-inch 3M automotive adhesive. You just peel it off. If you haven't worked with this before, it's amazing stuff. And it's really strong, and this 1 inch is really, really good. The other thing I'm not going to worry about is I'm not going to worry about that if I cover the holes, because that's okay. Because when we secure this in place, we're going to drive up through these with screws. And so we're not going to hurt. We'll just punch clean through this, and that's not going to be a problem. So all you just need to do is just take this
and just roll it out back from the lip just a little bit, because you don't want to have it exposed, right? Now you can do this in pieces at a time. It also stretches fairly well, so it should make most of the curves. Now a couple of these curves are pretty aggressive, so if you do end up in a situation where you can't make the curve, that's okay. Just cut it off right there, lay it down, and make sure, this is a great example. I've got some air bubbles. Just make sure to walk those air bubbles out. So because you want to make sure you've got a good clean adherence once we put this on. This is also why we clean the underside of our bumper, and we clean this as well. Okay, so just continue to work your way around, make each curve as you go, get each section, and walk the entire section all the way across with this adhesive, and then we're going to secure this into place. All right, so this is where your tape is gonna really going to be a big help. Now, the other thing you can also choose to do if you want, you can actually add a second line here on this inner edge as well, if you want to make sure it's extra secure through the middle. But you install this by just peeling back the second layer, this red layer. Go ahead and peel that back. Now let me show you, before I do that, let me show you what we're going to do. Now I've grabbed a couple of buckets, if you can see them, just to help me, and you could use a box or some, whatever is handy to, so you don't have to struggle trying to hold this thing up the whole time. But basically what you're going to do is, once you have all of your tape peeled back, you can take it and just fit it up into this space, and you can feel, you can just kind of set and adjust and set and adjust to all get it right on. So that about right there is pretty good. So if I had my tape off, I would now press upwards to get it to seal on really, really nicely, especially right here through the middle. Okay, but you can see how it now matches all the curves. The lip on this edge on the lip itself is bumped up against the center piece, okay? And this is where the tape is going to hold all of this while you drive your screws, so you don't have to worry about your screw holes being in the wrong place or anything like that, okay? So just hold this up really, really tight into place, okay? So with that demo, let me go ahead and get all of mine all peeled off and ready to go, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so I've gone ahead and added that second track that I mentioned just a minute ago, okay? This will help hold it in place while we do the install. Now, when you do this, you want to be gentle at first, but you want to use a very, very light touch, because you don't want it to adhere while you are still setting it, right? So use a very light touch, and if you don't hear that, there's popping as the center is trying, it's trying to stick down. I mean, this is going to do a really good job holding it in place. So you just want to measure and measure and measure. Keep checking your fitment, and there's no real science to this. This is art, right? This is trying to get it into exactly the right position. So just keep checking each side. Check that fitment on each side. That looks pretty good. That looks really, really good. Okay, so especially in the center section, this is the point now where I'm going to apply upward pressure to get that to stay. Okay? So now what I would recommend is get this to stick. Now it's not going to stick quite as well on the outsides yet, because you might have a little bit of curve, in your front lip itself. But mine is already starting to stick pretty good. So go ahead and get that all set into place. Go ahead and apply good upward pressure to get it to stick all the way through. And then we're going to crawl underneath, and we're going to look to drill those holes so we can add the bolts to secure this completely. All right, y'all, so here we are on the driver's side of the car looking at our setup. It's still just the adhesive holding it into place. Now, you've got your holes, right, that we were looking at earlier, there, as we work our way through. We're going to use a drill and a very fine bit to make some pilot holes straight up through these holes, because that's where our screws are going to go. But this is where you have to be very careful in what you do. So look at the depth of the plastic that you're drilling into. So you find the hole right here, and you find the depth of the plastic. That's not very much, right? It's only about this much. So if you take your drill and you drive all the way in, you're going to punch up and come through the other side. So when you drill these holes, you have to be very, very careful when you do every single one of them. Just barely enough to penetrate in through the plastic of the bumper cover, okay? So go ahead and drill all the holes. Now, I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit when I do this right now, because there's two different ways of securing this. And I'm actually going to do a combination of both. So if I had more plastic rivets, and when I talk about plastic rivets, I mean like this right here. This is that plastic ratcheting rivet that goes in, and then the center pin goes in. Now, ironically enough, if I had more of those, I'd probably do it all in plastic rivets. So I'm going to tell you both ways to do it, and in this case, I'm going to do both. So the kit came with some coarse grain metal screws. And they're about that long. So when you put them in, you've got to be really, really careful. But in these outer positions, 1, 2, 3 in the outer positions, the screws should go in okay. So even when you drill your hole and you're putting the screw in, put it in by hand with a screwdriver and make sure that you're not hitting the top and coming out the top. That would be a huge bummer. If you are, I'd recommend switching to my other plan, which is using those plastic rivets. Now, in the center, when you look in the center right here, you can see how thin this is. You can find one of the holes right here, and you can find right here where, I mean, that's really thin, and that's thin enough that the supplied screws would come through the top. So in the center, 1, 2, 3, in the center, I'm going to use those plastic rivets. If you do decide to use those BMW OEM plastic rivets, they are a 1/4 inch drill bit. Okay, so I'm going to use a 1/4 inch on these, and it's an 1/8 inch that I'm going to use as a pilot hole for the screws. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 screws on the outside, 1, 2, 3 of the expanding rivets in the center, and 1, 2, 3 down the other side as well. Okay, so the big caution on this is when you drill this, be super, super careful that you don't drive all the way through. All right, so go ahead and get all those holes drilled, and then we're almost done. All right, so let's take a look at this from underneath. So, excuse me, there's not 3, it's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws as we come across this outer lip section, 3 across the middle, and then 3 or 4 across the other side, of course, because they match. So, I used these coarse grain screws, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the side after drilling very, very carefully. And again, that's an 1/8 inch drill bit to punch they're pilot holes, because I want these to go in really cleanly and really nicely. In the middle, as we look, I have plastic rivets right here, all the way across, 1, 2, 3, all the way across. That is an 1/8 inch hole. So you want to use an 1/8 inch bit to put that in, push the rivet in, set the pin in, and it is really nice and solid. And I don't have to worry about over penetration of the screw or anything up here. Now granted, I could get a very short kind of, short stubby screw to stick in there. But in this case, I think those plastic rivets are going to work absolutely perfectly. And like I said, if you didn't want to do the screws, you honestly could use plastic rivets, I think, through all of it, and you'd use an 1/8 inch bit throughout the entire arc. But all in all, as you can see, it's done. So let me pull back. Let me give you a long look on what this looks like, but it's all done. All right, y'all, quick push back here. So with a little bit better light, I couldn't be happier. Fitment is fantastic, looks really, really good. It's got this kind of side winglets that tie into the rear winglets. If you haven't seen them yet, that's one of my other projects, so make sure to check that out. But all in all, this looks really good. Now look all the way down, you can see also right on the very, very bottom edge, the slip low install as well. It looks like it's right at the perfect spot to cut down on any scrapes if I get them. So this is fantastic. Really well done, everybody. This is easy. You should do this yourself. All right, all done. So one last thing to note, when you drive those screws in, make sure to do it by hand, because again, you're putting metal screws into plastic. So you just want them down tight and snug, because they're going into plastic and carbon fiber, and they can break those if you crank on them too hard. But you can get them down nice and tight, don't turn them too far. Hey, thank you to CT Carbon for making such a fantastic product, and make sure to check out my entire carbon fiber series for this. I'm doing the M2 CS kit through the entire car. Looks just gorgeous, and something I highly recommend you do on your car as well. They make a fantastic product, it looks great, and I'm really excited to have it installed. Please make sure to click subscribe and the little alarm bell. It makes a huge difference to my channel, and I'd really, really appreciate it. I have so many projects coming up this year, you're just not going to believe it, and I'm really excited to bring them to you. I'll see you on my next video.